So, Hari Om, thank you everyone for being here in this another second season of the Cosmic Wisdom School, class number 4, workshop masterclass number 4. And this is about hypnotherapy. I'm happy that there is some people here in the call live with us because I really would like to make this one a little more interactive with questions and answers. But I'll first gonna start by saying that I work with hypnotherapy now for about 12 years. And it's one of my favorite tools in my fairy tool belt of healing arts. I don't know if all of you know all what I do, but I started as a yoga teacher 26 years ago or so. For me, yoga was always more than just the physical postures, was a philosophical system for enlightenment, individuation, union with body, mind, spirit. Was a lot about philosophy and spirituality. And when I came to work in Costa Rica, I was a little bit frustrated at first because I worked in a surf camp. I was teaching yoga for people, mostly women, learning how to surf. And they just wanted one more exercise to sweat and stretch. At that time, 26 years ago, there was this fever in America, in United States, of hot yoga and fast yoga and vinyasa. And coming from Brazil and a different culture and studying classical yoga, for me, like I said, yoga was always much more than just the physical. So it was a little bit frustrating. At some point, I felt I was a little bit of a, I'm sorry for the word, but like a prostitute. I was just selling what people wanted, was not what made me happy. It was just like, okay, body, physical stretch. But even though I was teaching mostly asanas, I always like to tell people what yoga truly was and give a little bit of the theory and philosophy of it. But I got a little bit tired with the shallowness of it. And then I started venturing towards other modalities and dove a little deeper into transpersonal psychology and hypnotherapy. And was when I decided to study with Dr. Brian Weiss, who wrote the bestseller called Many Lives, Many Masters. And I also study with Dolores Cannon, level 1 and level 2 in her classes. And was really, was so amazing. Yeah. But anyway, so it's been 26 years that I work with yoga, meditation, breath work, and transpersonal psychology from holotropic at Stan Grof teachings, and Akashic record readings, body work also for over 20 years, sound healing, sound journey, all kinds of different modalities of healing art, shamanic journeys, shamanic meditations, rituals. So in the beginning, yoga was incantations, was rituals and practices like fire ceremony and mantra chanting. So it's very much about the mind, the workings of the mind, right? And hypnotherapy is a lot about that too. So I would like to talk or to start this talk talking about what hypnosis or hypnotherapy is not. Because I blame a little bit media and Hollywood because they always portrayed hypnosis and hypnotherapy as something scary or something that you're going to lose control. I'm going to clap and you're going to close your eyes and be like barking like a dog and don't remember anything. So hypnotherapy is nothing like that. Okay. So hypnotherapy is not that. So it's just very important for start this talk with that. And within, as the name says, hypnotherapy, so the last part of this word is therapy. So works hypnosis for therapy. So that is the first differentiation that I would like to make, differentiation. So what is hypnosis? So hypnosis, it's simply focus awareness. That's it. That's what hypnosis is. Hypnosis is focus awareness. It's very strange and funny. I always like to use this analogy with yoga because that was my background. This is how I started in healing arts. But when we talk about yoga, the people who doesn't have much knowledge about yoga, the first things that comes to mind is maybe like a stretch or head up, head down, feet up. And when we talk about hypnosis, I should have asked you what is the first word that comes to your mind, but I already gave you the answer. But hypnosis is just focus awareness, right? I don't know what people have in mind, but it's so strange. I have clients that they come to me and they say, oh, I want to have a hypnotherapy session with you, but I'm afraid, I'm scared. Or can we go for a lunch and talk about hypnotherapy? And I'm like, no, I don't do that. And I was like, you're going to your doctor and say, hey, doctor, I need to have a surgery. Can we have a meeting and maybe by lunch for 2 hours of your time and talk about hypnotherapy? So I'll decide if I'm going to have a session with you or not. It blew my mind because I had to deal with so much of this misunderstandings of what hypnotherapy is. And part of my mission is really unveil this mystery of what is hypnotherapy. So hypnosis is that, is focused awareness. And we go into those states of mind naturally many times a day. So there is something that is natural hypnosis. So we go to the states naturally. When you're falling asleep, when you're coming out from a sleep, that are the most important to know. So that state between sleep and awake. So when you're almost coming out from your sleep, when you're almost falling to a sleep, and there's those images, random memories that comes to your mind, to awareness, that's a hypnotic state. So imagine that the mind is made for this wide lens. And when we're doing hypnosis, you're focusing, you're zooming in your awareness to focus in that one point. And then we can talk. I have a video on YouTube where I describe the differences between hypnotherapy and meditation, guided meditation, and yoga nidra. So you can watch that video as well if you want to go a little bit deeper into that. So, so we have then natural hypnosis. You know, when you're watching a movie and you're so much into the movie and your child or your friend or someone is talking to you, but you don't really listen because it's like pratyahara, the absence of the sense or the withdrawal of the senses. So you're not really listening. You hear, but you're not listening. That's a hypnotic state. And you're so much focused and concentrated in the movie that you even become part of the movie. And you feel the emotions of being in that movie. That's a hypnotic state. Another example of a natural state of hypnosis, and you're driving on a boring road and suddenly you don't realize how we got from A to Z. You just arrived and it's like, holy schmoly, how did I'm already here. So that is a hypnotic state. That's why it's dangerous to fall asleep when you're driving, right? Because there's many different levels of hypnotic state as well. And then there is self-hypnosis. And we as hypnotherapists, we like to say that every hypnosis is self-hypnosis. Nobody can force this hypnosis onto you. You need to be willing and wanting to. But we can also talk a little bit more about that because there's some subjective or subtle ways of hypnosis that we are also under the spell, very much so. But usually when you go to therapy, it's self-hypnosis. You want to be there. You want to go there. It's not that I can just look at you, touch you, and make you look at your clock and you unwilling are going to go into this hypnotic state that you lose conscious, bark like a dog. Again, that doesn't exist. But there's subliminal suggestions and messages. And I'll give you an example. So let's say you're in a cinema, in a movie theater, watching a movie, and then suddenly there's 1 second of an image of a Coca-Cola and a chips. And then you don't know why, but after the movie, you really feel like you want to drink a Coca-Cola. So that's a state of hypnosis as well, because you are in this, that's a state actually of suggestion. Because when you're watching a movie, you are in the hypnotic state. So that advertisement, that 1 second advertisement is the suggestion. And we're going to talk about suggestions in a moment. But now we're talking about different types of hypnosis to get into hypnotherapy. So we have natural hypnosis, self-hypnosis, and we have stage hypnosis. Stage hypnosis is, as the name says, is like a theater stage. So people go into a stage is like a show, is entertainment. So all of that is very important to have in mind, to not asking people like me to go for lunch to talk about having a session of hypnotherapy with. So when you come for a session of hypnotherapy, when you're using hypnotic state for therapy, you know that those things are not going to happen. You're not going to have a suggestion that you don't want to receive. You're not going to enter a trance-like state if you don't want to. You're not going to lose consciousness, forget your name, bark like dogs. Okay, that many of those things will happen. It's not dangerous. People ask me very often if hypnotherapy is dangerous. And I laugh because I have, again, give examples of clients. They come to me and they say, I want to have a session of hypnotherapy, but I'm really scared. But next week, I'm going to have like a ayahuasca retreat or even a breathwork retreat. And I have to laugh because I would be much more scared of that, taking ayahuasca or even breathwork for the matters, than to allow myself to go into a very comfortable, pleasant, relaxing, deep relaxing state. So that's what hypnosis or hypnotherapy is. So hypnotherapy is a form of therapy. So the word therapy comes from Greek of therapeia, which is to take care of, to heal. And hypnosis also comes from a Greek word that means sleep. So actually sleeping and healing through your sleep. Hypnosis is also called nervous sleep, because when people are in states of hypnosis or hypnotic state, the motor functions go a little bit loose and limp. And that's one of the signs as a therapist that I know when the person is under trance or not. Usually there's exceptions, but usually a person is so relaxed, they look like they're asleep, they don't move any part of the body. And it's amazing to see, and it's beautiful. So this is what hypnosis is. Hypnosis is focus awareness. Hypnotherapy is a form of therapy that works deep relaxation together with suggestions for healing, for therapy. Clear, right? Simple, very simple. Do you have any questions so far? No? Okay. So let's talk about trance. So when we go into a hypnotherapy, or into a hypnotic state, we enter what is called the trance state. Now, again, not every trance state is related to hypnosis, but every hypnosis has an element of a trance state. I make myself clear. So you can get into trance state through many different things, and societies all around the world throughout history have entered trance-like states for healing, for connection with spirit realms, for connection with the higher self, etc., etc. Through drumming, through ecstatic dancing, through entheogens, plant medicine, you name it. So people throughout history have been used those trance states for an expanded states of consciousness, for healing, or for an experience, or again, to enter in contact with guides, with spirits, and it goes on and on and on, like religion, for instance. And there's some form of religion, or all forms of religion has rituals that use certain trance state. But there's one in particular that is very interesting that people entered. And sometimes those trance states can be very ecstatic as well. There's a micro difference, but there's a lot of similarities between trance state and an ecstatic state. And there is some religion, for instance, when you're in the church and you scream the names of God and you dance and you sing. So you enter in this trance state. And then the master, the religious figure comes, they push your head and you fall off on the ground and have this ecstatic states of you see God. So this pushing the forehead down and a person fall is a hypnotic induction, together with the dancing and the singing. So all of this are hypnosis. And then what they tell you throughout this ritual is a suggestion that can be a subliminal suggestion and can be a very well thought suggestion. That's why it's important to understand the difference between you go into a hypnotherapy. Again, I'll give you this example. And when you go to other forms, like a religious ritual, for instance, maybe that suggestion that are given to you, or a lot of sailors, people that works with sailing something for you, they're very professional. Actually, I did a course, I haven't finished, but I did a course on conversational hypnosis. And a lot of people who sell things take those trainings, those courses. So they're really using through talk, hypnotic suggestions. So you buy the things. So in the case of the church, they will use that suggestion for gain followers, or for you to give their money for the church, for instance. So when people tell, again, is hypnotherapy dangerous? No, hypnotherapy is not dangerous, but can hypnosis be used to harm? Yes, but like everything else, people say, oh, social media is the devil, or Instagram is horrible. No, it's a tool. Now it is good or bad, depending on how you use it. But it's very safe. It's a very safe method for therapy. And I work with many different methods. For me, it's one of the best and most efficient methodology for therapy. Okay, so we're good. So trance state. Sometimes when a person is entering a trance state, they can also experience a catharsis state, which can be very healing. So what is a catharsis state? Is a state of emotional relief or release. So deep crying, laughing. Sometimes when you get into those hypnotic states, you experience reliving things. Can be good, can be traumatic, but we also trust that the higher self or your inner healer never show you things that you're not ready to see. And that's another topic, because people ask me often, what if I was a murderer in another life, for those who believe in past life? And if I see that, what happened? And I always tell them, I have given almost 1,000 hypnotherapy sessions in 12 years, and I have never seen one case of a client that received an information that they're not ready to receive. Because we work here with the subconscious mind, and we work here with the superconscious mind when you work with hypnotherapy. And your superconscious mind always wants your safety, wants you to thrive, to heal. You'll never, and it's you. It's a part of you. It's hard to understand, but we have all these hidden aspects within our mind that is not like in the front face, it's hidden in the back, or it's floating above. To give an example, like the higher self is almost like it's above us, because it connects with the unified field, as Akashic field, and is that part of us that is the most loving part of us, and we wouldn't do anything to harm us. And yes, there is times where people see very strong things. I'm not gonna lie to you. Yes, they see it, but they're ready to see it. And I was very surprised. There was one of my clients, without saying names, of course, this is private information, but I can tell you anecdotes and experiences of stories and case studies. And there was this one client of mine that she came to see me because she couldn't have babies. And she went to see many different doctors. All the doctors said physically she was perfect, fine. There was nothing wrong with her. And then when we go into the hypnotic state, she remembered. I always say remember, because we never know. It can be a symbology from the subconscious, an analogy, can be perhaps a memory stuck on our DNA from our ancestors. Now epigenetics evolving. Maybe one day we'll know exactly if past life really exists. But what I tell my clients is that it's not relevant if it's past life or if it's just an analogy from the subconscious. But the thing is, she remembers something that appeared to be a past life where she was like in a cult. She was like what they used to call a witch. They wouldn't call them those words in that time that she was seeing, but that's what we would identify with being a witch. And she saw herself inside a cave doing these very intricate ceremonies. And one of the things that she had to do, that was her job, is to find kids and steal their heart. So they would give children hearts as an offering in this ritual. It was so strong that this woman could see that. And then they also would do divination with bones, with the children's bones. And she saw that. And then when we went to connect with her higher self, and I always ask the question, why was relevant for this person to see that? Why was important for her to see that? The higher self said, well, now she understands some of her difficulties and some of the things that she needs to go through and learn. And what she needs to do in this lifetime is to look at children's eyes and talk to them and be close to them, knowing there is nothing right or wrong here. In that time, it was part of the belief system, is what they used to do. It wasn't wrong. It was just like part of that belief, that in that philosophical system, I would say, in that belief, in that religion of that time. So, and then we take away the guilt, right? Because it for them was right. It was the right thing to do for that time and age. But it's important to have the closure then, otherwise it's not therapeutic. So we can go a little bit deeper in when I do my training on hypnotherapy. This is just like a class, a talk, a workshop on it. So I'm not going to get very deep into the techniques of hypnosis, but I'm giving you examples of how a person will see that which they're able to handle. But a few months later, she got pregnant, miraculously. And that happens often in my work. So things just unfold and resolve by magic, like feels like magic. But there's something that clicks in the subconscious, some understanding, some clarity, and then some homework that we need to do, some practices that we need to incorporate into our life. So when we go into a trance-like state and in a hypnotherapy settings, those things can happen, that you for sure enter a trance-like state, and then sometimes a catharsis state that can be also very free and very healing. I give you another example. There was a client that he had like a chronic shoulder pain. Same story. They always go see all kinds of doctors before seeing a hypnotherapist, right? So you got to see all this kind of doctors. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. There was apparently was all right in his arm. And then he comes to have a hypnotherapy session, and he remembers that he was in a war and he died very violently with a spear in his shoulder. It was kind of very traumatic death. And somehow there was a part of this memory that got stuck in his DNA shape form memory. It's hard for me to talk about these things because even though I work with this type of work for 12 years, I also have a very scientific mind. So I have this kind of within myself, this a trick to know this, scientifically you can't prove those things. If you go into a very academic courses and workshops, I was into one workshop about false memory, and you have all the scientists, PhDs, saying that it's impossible to remember things from when you're 2-3 years old because part of your brain is not formed then. But then you have cases like this, and how do you explain that? And that's why I like transpersonal psychology, because it's that field of psychology that studies the phenomenologies of those things. So, and little by little, we're starting to unveil more and more information about some things we can prove, some things we cannot prove yet. But the most important thing is to see changes in this work. And that for me is what is relevant. So to complete the story, after the session, the pain went away. And I have stories like that with myself as well. And experiencing in me, in my body. So you just remember, you see these things, and there's something in you that changes, that clicks. one time I watched a video of Greg Braden, a scientist, talking about hypnotherapy and this exactly what happens in our brain when we go through these experiences and something click and something change and something heal. But I cannot, because he's a scientist, I cannot repeat what he said, but I was at the moment I had this aha moment. I was like, oh yeah, okay, well, this is what I see in my work every day, but I can't explain. And then I could never find that video again. I tried. But when I was a child, I used to say that certain things we don't need to understand. We just need to live and experience them. And this type of work, when you work with these things every day, I feel like I am the scientist of my own work, of what we are seeing, these repetitive cases, these things that repeats itself. So we need to take in consideration, this is what science is, right? Is to replicate the experiment and receive the same results. So within the hypnotherapy field, there have been doctors and scientists that have tried to prove the existence of past life. Right now, I forgot his name, but I will find all this material for you and share with you in our WhatsApp group. But there is a book that's called Children That Lived Before. I'll write it down and send you the picture of the book. And those are closed cases of doctors who went to visit those kids who claim to remember their life before. They remembered their families, they remembered their name, and some of them even remember who killed them and where they're buried. So they went and discovered all of that, and they could prove those cases. That's why it's called the closed case. And it's amazing. It's very mind-blowing. That's not my job. That's not my job as a hypnotherapist. What I tell my clients is usually this: it's not important or relevant if what you feel that you see is really a memory from a past life or last week, or analogy from the subconscious, a symbol from the subconscious. What is relevant, is important, is if after the session you received clarity or healing. Why, this is why you came here, right? Is to receive some clarity, some form of relief, or some form of healing. And sometimes most of the times, the higher self gives you homework. So it's not that you're gonna just come to a session and all your problems of 3 lifetimes are resolved in 2 hours. I always tell people, if that would be the case, I would be millionaire by now. That's not the case either. So usually higher self gives you exercises, practices. I'll give an example: stop smoking. People come very often to hypnotherapy for stop smoking. There's 2 ways that I personally work with this type of clients. I always prefer to give one of the session that is a more general session. So we're gonna discover what is that in the subconscious that makes a person wanting to smoke in the first place. Most of hypnotherapists, they don't work in that way. You just go to an office and they're gonna read you the script for stop smoking, and maybe 90% or maybe 80% of the cases, that person will go back home and they'll stop smoke. But then, if you don't heal and don't realize and don't dig deep into the root cause of why a person smoke, maybe this person will stop smoking, but maybe she will start biting nails or eating sugar or change for Coca-Cola. Because there's obviously some deep-rooted needs that are not being met, and it's different for every person. But also with there's something else I want to say about that, and I totally blanked. Oh yeah, about the homeworks. So, but sometimes the higher self gives a person homework. For instance, if you want to stop smoke, every time you feel like you want to smoke, instead of smoke, you're going to go outside and touch the ground. Or you're going to go outside and take a cup, 3 deep breaths of fresh air. And those homeworks are different for each person, and they work for that specific client. So don't take that what I'm saying that is going to work for you. Maybe it will, but your higher self knows what you need. Maybe you're a person who loves work with the earth, or it's very grounding for you. And then maybe your higher self will tell you, well, if when you feel like smoking, go touch the ground. But if maybe a person is a total different personality who needs something different. So stop smoking is pretty easy through hypnotherapy. We have a very good percentage rate, success rates for those kinds of things. So another question that people often ask me is, how many sessions do I need? And that depends and vary for different cause, different things that we want to treat. If it's stop smoking, if it's a deep trauma, if it's a person has like 15 years of abuse in childhood, we cannot deal with all of that in one session. So it's important to understand that also hypnotherapy is not like a magic key that I'm going to open your brain and remove the old, bring in the new, and you're healed and done. It's therapy. Like the words say, therapy. Therapy is a process. And I like to tell that my clients, it would be like anti-ethic of myself to say one session is going to heal you. I never say, first of all, that will heal you. But all forms of therapy is a process. And it's a tool. I'll do my part and you have to do your part. Now, if you come to see me to stop smoking and your higher self said, well, every time you feel like smoke, you need to go and touch the ground, but you don't do that homework, and then you come to me and say, hey, the session didn't work. And then I'm going to ask you, well, did you do what your higher self told you to do? But because those simple exercises sometimes are so simple, and the messages are so simple that the person don't even believe them or don't do. So that's why we record the sessions usually. And it's not because a person is unconscious during the session, but because we work in that state of mind of dream state between sleep and awake. So, you know, when you wake up in the morning after an amazing dream and you remember all your dream and it's so vivid in you at the moment, but then it's middle of the day and it's the evening, you already forgot your dream. So in the same way is this hypnotherapy state, this hypnotic state. So we record the session so you can hear later, you can listen to it later. I'm going to open to questions in a moment. So I'm just like here to complete a little bit. So when you are in the trance state, there's a few things that you can see as a therapist, seeing from outside that happen. When you search for the word trance in Wikipedia, they will tell you that trance is a stupor state. It's like, just like feel that the person is completely asleep. But within that sleep, there's many different levels and degrees of hypnotherapy or trance state. It can be, there is a very deep trance state and there is very gentle or superficial trance state. It's like, you know, it's like let's see sleep as waves. You start with that very like, between sleep and awake, images, visions, memories, and then dreams. And then you're full on the deep sleep, you don't remember anything. And then you start going back up again, right? So in trance state or hypnotherapy states, there is also different states within a hypnotic state. But another thing that we realized in trance is this losing or diminishing of the motor function. So usually a person doesn't move at all. The body is so heavy, they feel so heavy, so relaxed. And it's not that they can't move. It's just that that part of you is just turned off. And so that's from a therapist point of view, when I see a client that is totally immobile, physically immobile, is a good sign that this person is in a deeper hypnotic or trance state. There's other tests that we can do is the eye, when we see the eye movement. We see if a person is easier or harder to be hypnotized. There's tests that we can do for that, but everybody can. That's another also misunderstanding. Some people say that they can't be hypnotized. Everybody, every person can be hypnotized. I like to tell people, if you sleep, you can be hypnotized. Because that's what it is. It's a state of between sleep and awake. Now, for some people, certain induction techniques can be challenging. I like to use the longer version of induction. which is a 20 minutes visualization technique, very similar to a guided meditation, what we're going to do here together in the end. That's similar to a guided meditation. But I know other methods that is like the 1 minute induction, the tricks. You know, the magician don't give all the tricks, but we have all those tricks. But so there's different ways, different methodology for taking a person into trance state. I like to use the longer version because then you have more time to get into that very deep, relaxing state. And then when you are in that deep, relaxing state, and we talk about that in the last class with the shamanic journey class, that first we have imagination and visualization as a door to get into those trance states, to then the images are starting to pop up spontaneously. Remember, we talked about that? So in hypnotherapy, it's the same. So when I use the induction, the longer induction of visualization, now imagine that, imagine a white cloud, visualize this, you are in a beautiful place in nature, you are imagining. But then when we go through that portal and you are on the other side into a deep trance state, sometimes then the images and the visions, they pop to your awareness spontaneously. And of course, there's different brain waves, right? We operate into beta brain waves, and to go into a hypnotic state, we're going to alpha theta brain waves. And now there's all the different brain waves that have been discovered as well. Within the history of hypnosis, I believe that hypnosis always existed, that we know of. Again, when we talk about trance state, all those very ancient societies was already using trance state to achieve an extraordinary state of consciousness, connect with spirits, deceased spirit, the hunters to find where the animals are, the gatherers to find where the plants are, the plants talk to you, tell you how to be used. All of that are hypnosis. You take yourself into, well, it's not hypnosis because that word was coined years later, but what I want to say again is that a hypnotic state has a trance state, and those trance states have always been existed. But the word hypnosis is much more modern. So it was on the 700s, the first times that we heard the word hypnosis. So one of the first doctors to use hypnosis was Mesmer. His name was Mesmer, and his technique was mesmerism. That was in 1779. I remember because I was born in 79, but 200 years later. So Mesmer, he believed that there is a magnetic field around us. He also called it animal magnetism. And he believed that moving magnets around the body and working with that magnetic field would take someone into those trance states, into this hypnotic state. But the word hypnosis didn't exist yet. It was used to be called mesmerism. And then another doctor after him in the 800s realized and discovered that what Mesmer was discovering wasn't completely true or legit, because Mesmer believed that only through operating in this magnetic field, a person would enter this nervous sleep state or hypnosis state. But a guy called James Braid, he was a Scottish man doctor. And I love that guy because I love Scottish people anyways, but not because of that, but because he was so connected with the yoga philosophy and the Eastern philosophies as well. So he was one of the first doctors of the time to try to combine. And you see that in his teachings that there was a lot of inspiration in the Eastern philosophy and meditation. But he realized that it's not necessarily working with this magnetism around the body a person would go into those deep nervous sleep. He actually realized that the person could take themselves into a hypnotic state, like self-hypnosis. So there was no need of anyone moving magnets, imams around your body for you to get into the nervous sleep. And he was the person who coined the word hypnosis. So he was the first person that used this word, hypnosis, was James Braid. Even doctors these days, when they think about hypnosis, they talk about Mesmer, but people forget about James Braid. He was one of the most important characters that study hypnosis. A little bit later, we have, of course, Breuer, that was friends with Freud, and Freud. So Freud was one of the, as well, teachers, doctors that was working with hypnosis for healing in his therapy. And there's a lot of history there about his methodology. He believed himself not to be so good in hypnosis. You have to understand that like every other science or methodology, those things were being evolved with practice throughout times, and the constrictions of society and religious system of that time would influence these techniques and practices. So Freud wasn't so much keen into hypnosis after some time, and he started focusing more into free association. But he was one of the first doctors using hypnosis. And then we can talk about the modern teachers of hypnotherapy. That was the ones that I study with, and they're still out there, incredible teachers. So fast forward after Freud, we have one man that he was very influenced, and he's also considered to be one of the fathers of hypnosis in modern time, is, why did I blank his name? Wait, I have it here in my book. So in my book, I write all about this, and much more in all the details. So Freud, and then we're going to the modern dudes. Oh, I remember. Erickson was one, it is still considered the Ericksonian methodology is still one of the most studied these days. And Erickson is an incredible personality. And he was one of the, because of his work, it was also the people that work in neurolinguistic. They invented neurolinguistic, was influenced by the work of Dr. Erickson. And conversational hypnosis is the field that Dr. Erickson was most known for. There's a story, a beautiful story that I like to tell my students, my clients, of a man, a doctor, therapist. He was treating this client, many conditions, and he wasn't being very successful in treating this client. So he suggested to his client to go see Dr. Erickson. So the client went to see Dr. Erickson. And in one session, he got better, and he got much better. I don't want to say healed, but much, much better. So his therapist was very curious and asked his client, what did Dr. Erickson did that I didn't do? what was the magic, right? In other words. And the client said, I can't really point what did he say. He used the same words, the same things you do it, but his energy, just the way he is, the way he speaks, made the difference. And that reminds me something from, again, the yoga tradition, the gurus. Have you ever heard the disciples when they say that when they sit around the guru, the teacher, their master, and the energy of the teacher and the master is like contagious, and they heal just being in the presence of this person. And that comes with practice of embodying our teachings, to embody our practice, to become that what we want to teach. That's a beautiful example of how also the presence of a therapist that has done the therapy in themselves can affect this magnetic field around the person. Dr. Brian Weiss, when I went to study with him in his first class with his wife, and it's very interesting to have husband and wife working together in a stage, It's like when you really want to know someone, you ask the spouse, right? So Dr. Brian Weiss is this soft, gentle soul. He speaks softly. He's so charismatic. He's so kind. He seems to be such a kind person. And his wife, Leslie Wise, she said in the first class, I know all of you here very curious to know how it is Dr. Brian was back home. I can assure to you that he's always like this. He's always speaks softly. He's always kind. He's always loving. And that was so beautiful for me to be present there, listening to this, living this moment. And so those two stories kind of clicked to me, and I remembered. It's so beautiful because it's just like in hypnotherapy, the therapist is about listening. It's about asking the right questions. It's about really being present. Sometimes what the person need is really being heard and be held, right? Beyond the induction, beyond the suggestion. But that presence is also very important. So that's some of the things I wanted to share with you. How are we time? Good. Wow. Okay. So I want to open here for some questions. I know there's a million questions. I know there's just a few of you now in the call, unfortunately. But when I do this kind of talk for retreats, for festivals. Sometimes there's hundreds of people, and I do demonstrations in stage as well. And people ask the most amazing, I love the questions. So that helps me also to answer and talk more when you have questions about past life, future life, multidimensionality, soulmate, whatever you want to ask. So please unmute yourself and ask any question you like. Between lives. There's a great teacher as well that wrote an amazing book called Journey of Souls. His name is Michael Newton. As a hypnotherapist, excuse me, his specialty was to take people in between lives. And he has done that for 35 years of his career. And he wrote this book after 35 years working with that. So again, going back to science, when you have one client, 3 clients that tell you something, right? Oh, okay, interesting. But when you have thousands of people in 35 years describing similar things in similar ways, we should take in consideration. So he wrote this incredible book that is specialized in between lives. What is happening when you're dying? What's happening when you're being born? What's happening in between lives? Very interesting book. I like to suggest that book for people who are going through grieving process, because it can be quite enlightening to see death and birth from different perspectives. It's like people who go through near-death experience. There's a lot of studies on that too, in this extrasensorial experiences of near-death experiences. And a lot of people describe these experiences very similar as well. So those are the kind of mystery that science still can't fully comprehend. But again, it's not because it's invisible and we can't see that those things doesn't exist. Perhaps they do exist. Perhaps they want to teach us something, show us something, help us heal from something. I also studied with Dolores Cannon. She was one of the pioneers as well in the modern hypnotherapy, almost in the same time as Dr. Brian Weiss. And Dr. Brian Weiss had the constriction of the medical community. He was a well-established doctor. And when he had this one client, and he wrote his book, Many Lives, Many Masters, based on this one client, that she had all this list of pathologies. And every time he would give a regression session or hypnotherapy session, she would heal or get better from all those symptoms, until there was a time where she not just got healed, but she started developing extrasensorial powers, extrasensorial perceptions. And she started communicating with guides from higher dimensions. And she discovered things from the life of Dr. Brian Weiss he had never told anyone. He tells all of that in this book. So this book, in a way, for someone like myself, is a little bit like, yeah, of course, because I'm not a doctor, right? But he wrote this book to kind of show proof to the medical community that what he was seeing was legit, that he wasn't crazy, you know. Now imagine that is now, he's still alive, he's 80 something years old probably this today. Imagine the types of Murmur and Freud and James Braid, I mean, to talk about these things. It's like we're going long ways when we think about the evolution of this human mind. It's quite fast in a way, but also in a way it's quite funny to see what people like Freud were saying just like, I don't know, 80 years ago. It's like silly, you know, like sometimes even ridiculous things that he was saying. So we're evolving pretty fast. But Dolores Cannon, she was not a doctor. She was just a hypnotherapist. So she didn't give a damn to what people would talk about her. She was just reporting in her books what she was seeing in her session. And she wrote about 19 or 20 incredible books. And it's about people who lived before, past lives, the creators of this planet, the the 3 waves of volunteer and the new earth, and talking about all kinds of aliens, star beings. She went like, whoa, because she could. So it's amazing. And she was the one who, I would say, discovered. She didn't discover, but she was the person who had the guts and the possibility to go and say, hey, I discovered something here, that these people are not just putting out there messages and memories and symbols from the subconscious, but there is something else that is talking here. She didn't call it higher self. She called it subconscious because she didn't know how to call it. I studied with her and her daughter, both them together, and they tell you that. Now, I'm not saying that with my own words. She says that I started calling subconscious because I didn't know how to call it, but it's not the same subconscious that a psychologist would describe. It's more like the higher consciousness. Today, we're describing that part of the self as the highest self, or super consciousness, that Dolores Cannon discovered we can have an access connection to and ask direct questions to. That is the methodology that I like to work most in my sessions of hypnotherapy. So a client comes, they write a list of questions, we go through a relaxing state, we go to the connection with the subconscious mind, the same way you would in a breathwork or an ayahuasca ceremony. And then we're going to go a little step beyond and ask direct questions like, why did you show that image for this person to see? Why was it important for him to see that? And why is this information relevant to the time and life that she's living now? Because that's what's most important. That's why you're here. So Dolores Cannon was the one who developed this form of working with hypnotherapy. And then we have other teachers that also goes even beyond Dolores Cannon that are very much incredible in the work. So it's really like being quite cutting edge hypnotherapy at the moment. But still not so well seen by the very traditional doctors of psychiatrists and psychologists. It is very surprising because I attend those conferences sometimes. And when you see scientists, like I mentioned, the guys who study the brain and neurologists, and they're telling you that you can't remember things when you're 3 years old, but then you take someone in hypnotic state, and they can remember the clothing that they're wearing when they're 2, or even more so, they can discover the clothes that their mother's wearing in their birth, even though they're inside the belly. So that's the phenomenology that we're talking about here. That we're talking about consciousness. A consciousness is not limited by brain. Brain is like this, the projector that projects the movie. And yes, there's capacity just for certain things, but consciousness is beyond the brain, is beyond material. Now, the brain is material, the mind is immaterial, and consciousness is the amalgamation of all that elements of the mind and the collective mind and the unified field. So when we talk about hypnotherapy, we're tapping into also the super mind. And when we talk about consciousness, we can measure these things because we can't really We can open the mind and see consciousness. So we need to keep an open mind for all this kind of subjects still to this day. So I'm gonna ask again if you have any questions. Curious. So when you are from 0 to 5 or 0 to 7, we're still operating into alpha brainwaves most of the time. And it's like we're hypnotized. We live in the constant state of hypnosis. And apparently children, they can remember. Again, I always say for those who believe, because not everybody believes in past life, but for those who believe, it's believed that a child can remember the past life from the age of 0 to 5 and 7. Now, explaining you scientifically why is that, I don't know. I don't have that knowledge. But we see that when we see that in our work. And maybe that book can explain you a little bit more, the children who lived before. I read the book a long time ago. I remember the cases. I don't remember if they explained you scientifically what happens in the brain for a person to remember those things. But yes, there's cases, recorded cases in history. I was one of those children as well. I have my own belief that I can share, my personal projections here. I had strange phobias as a child one time, and I remember those things even later, beyond 5, 6 years old. There was one class at school that the teacher asked us to discover the French Revolution before she gives us the class about it. I don't know why. It was an experiment she was doing. I don't remember. That I don't remember. But I wrote what I felt about what it was. And she came to me and she said, wow, it was amazing what you wrote. How did you know all of that? And I told her, I remember. And she looked at me like, what? And I say, yeah, I remember. I have this vision sometimes. I can't explain that I was like a man and I had this blue jacket with a red stripe crossing over. Was it like that, their uniform? And she said, yeah, it was like that. So I have a friend also that she has a daughter that remembers her past life. And and she tells my friend, Mom, my other mom didn't comb my hair like that. She used to do like this. Can you do like my other mom? And my friend got a little bit scared, but she's so nice and so open-minded and so understanding that she used to tell her daughter, okay, daughter, I know you still have, attachment to this other mom, but I am your mother now, and I prefer to do this way. She wasn't like denying. No, someone a little more close-minded would say, oh, don't say this nonsense, grow up, or these things. We have been cut it off from our powers, but we have that capacity to go back and reactivate those capabilities to remember these things. Now, and that's again my personal belief. I believe that some of us are allowed to remember certain things because, or it's important for us for our future, two, because there's some important things that we need to heal. And that's why, again, hypnotherapy is a form of therapy, can help you deal with those things. Like repetitive dreams, for instance, strange phobias, even birthmark, apparently, they say can be memories from past life, something that's still lingering, traumas that is still lingering from beyond, that transcend the transpersonal, the realm of transpersonal, that transcend this physicality, this what we can perceive and see with our 5 senses in the here now. So a person can believe those things. Again, it's something for you to ask your daughter, ask the most questions that you can. I used to ask my daughter when she was little. She didn't have that many members, but I kept asking her, and I asked her when she was 2, when she was 3, when she was 10, when she was 12, and I asked the same question, like, do you remember where you were before, Mama? And she used to tell me, yes, I was a zebra in Africa, and I was drinking water from a pond, and someone shot me. And then I asked her again when she was 4, and she always tell me the same story. Yeah, it's funny stories like this. So another thing that I believe that some people are born with those memories is perhaps to help them in the future. I believe for myself, in my personal case, I was born with those memories, sometimes very uncomfortable memories. So I had to go through them, heal myself, and then walk this path of what is called the wounded healer to then be here doing this work for you today. It's like, going through the things, remember things, going through the hardships so you can go through them yourself, you can heal themselves, you can heal yourself to then heal or help others in the same path. So yeah, I don't know if I fully answer your question, but the truth is we don't know why, but it's important when it's there to dig in and see why is that. Maybe there is some important information you can find. And you can also do the process through you. You have the session for her. Sergey. That's also possible. I also have people in hypnotherapy who have channeled their pets. They come to receive messages from their pets. There was one time as this woman, she had a cat that was acting strange. She didn't know why. And then the cat spirit energy came through her in hypnotherapy and told her the cat didn't like the other cat that she brought home. It wasn't a compatible match. He was pissed. Yeah, well, we now have just a few more moments for a little short meditation practice. You can call it meditation, you can call it group hypnotherapy. Today is going to be very similar. So if you like, so this is a beautiful state that we go after meditation, after relaxation, after yoga nidra, after hypnotherapy practice. No need to be anxious, worried, concerned, fearful about the hypnotherapy session, not at all. It's so good. It feels so great. Oh my God, it's one of my favorite tools, honestly. And of course, this is just a little example, but when we are one-on-one asking questions in the process of hypnotherapy, it's a different experience. But it's always very relaxing, very pleasant. So to complete the practice today, I'm going to read the card that I got for us. It's the From Osho deck, Osho Zen Tarot. Every week I try a different oracle. This is the picture. It's very beautiful. Portrays someone sitting in meditation. And I'm going to put here my nerdy glass so I can read. Don't we have to love Osho? No? It's always like in the Zen, it's always the contradictions, the in and out, all and nothing. But it's interesting because it's a nice closure for this theme. Because one of the things that I like to teach in hypnotherapy is that the more we practice taking ourselves into trance-like state, it's like you become the child again that is pure, innocent, and totally open and connected with your ESP, with your extrasensory experiences. And the more you practice that, you become within, like in the example of the teacher, the gurus, the master, the more you embody it, you don't need to take yourself out there. You're already out there. You starting understanding when is that inner voice that speaks, or when is your ego speaking, when is your higher self speak. And you at will learn to navigate those states with ease. And then you don't need the induction that much. You don't need someone turning on the key. And then all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. You're already there. There's nowhere to go. It's beautiful. And before I close, there was one thing I forgot to mention about trance state, that there's 5. I realized that, I wrote that in my book, is my own realization. Now, there's 5 things that we can do to take ourselves into trance states that are very simple. One is focus. Remember, hypnosis is focus, tuning, focus the lens, the camera. The other thing is awareness. Be aware of your self-doing, the doing, surroundings, being aware. So focus, awareness, repetition. That's why mantra chanting, that's why repetitive breath, that's why repetitive dance, everything that repeats itself takes you into trance states. Rhythm, drumming, always the same rhythm on a drum, on the didgeridoo, on a flute. And intention. Intention is that one. I can only get there at my will. I have an intention to be doing this. That's my intention. So those are the 5 elements that we can use to take us into a trance state, in other ways, a hypnotic state. So that is self-hypnosis. When we do those 5 things, we can do that through so many: dance, rhythm, drumming, singing, chanting, mantra chant. Then it is your world to discover. When I discovered that, I realized that any practice and technique I would create for my clients would be beneficial for them. And because we want to use that trance state for, again, an expanded states of consciousness to awaken the dormant areas of the brain. That's why sometimes the exercises are so silly. You see, like Kundalini yoga, you can be up and down with your arms. It doesn't matter what you do. If there is rhythm, repetition, awareness, focus, and intention, anything. And then you have all these Indian gurus inventing all the you think nonsense things like, what? I just need to jump up and down for an hour. But then you do it and you see, you go into a trance state, you go into an expanded state of consciousness, you start tapping into your subconscious mind, into your higher mind. And the more you practice, the more you become. And then you don't need the vehicle anymore, you just are. So with that, I'll close. Thank you so much for being here.